We have apologies from Matthew Lloyd, Jim Noble, Bob Clemson, Colin and Sandy Pitchfork, Les Carlisle, Barry Towers, Ron Bolden, Marie Brad, Lindy Hall, Ian Seisman. Is there anyone else that we have been in contact with that might not be here? Okay. One more.
Apologies, Dalton.
You haven't got an apology from Tony Dalton.
Tony Dalton.
It's just arriving.
Where are you?
Right.
Get me to go down and put the shutter up.
Tell him the door's closed. You'll have to go home. All right, we'll just move straight into general business. The Ander Monday Fair, this is the fair that the Ander put on at the Town Hall, and the Australian Numismatic Society volunteered at that fair to sort of be as like an information counter. We also go looking for donations to the Ander when people come in, because of late they haven't been charging entry fees, but they have been asking for a gold coin donation. And it's been the ANS members that would be sitting at the door encouraging them to put their dollar in. And so that's what we used to be doing with the Ander Money Fair, but it's been cancelled this year. So we won't be going to the Ander Money Fair this year. Our next meeting is on Monday the 9th of November, and that particular meeting is going to be at Noble Numismatics, and we always start early at 7:30 p.m. Mainly because Jim Noble wants to go and have some dinner after the event, and generally wants to get there at a certain time. So and Jim's going to show the highlights of his next auction. The auction is sort of, from what I understand, has been a bit different over the past two auctions. This has been in the middle of the lockdowns and everything else, but he seems to be getting things happening. And I think from memory they still have the room bidders or something like that, but they have to be sort of spaced 1.5 metres apart and sitting down. So that's one. But yeah, so we'll be down at Noble Numismatics on the 9th of November. So 9th of November is the second Monday evening. 7:30 p.m, Jim Noble's. Our auction number 41 is going to be closed at the end of this meeting. This is auction 41 that Rod's brought along. And the usual story is that we get bid on various items last. And provided there's no higher bidders, postal or online bidders, we've probably got a bit of an advantage if you really want that item. So the lots are on display, and but as you know, we're only going to auction the lots that somebody has interest in. We're not going to go through all 130 lots tonight. We will simply go by whatever any of the members here says, well, I want to bid on that particular lot number 25, for instance. Rod will only auction that lot. So just please let Rod know which one you're interested in, and he will conduct the auction. Our conference, which was cancelled last June, we have rescheduled it for the 12th and 13th of June 2021. Now, again, that's fast approaching again, and the way things are going, it might be cancelled again. But it is totally dependent on what it says. We hope that the Queensland border will be open by that time, because I think a lot of the members from Queensland, they come to the conference because they are eager to learn more about their coins and everything else, and we've got a lot of information that they require, so they always come down for their conference. So yeah, but it's we've tentatively booked for the 12th and 13th of June 2021, but that's subject to everything else. If they've cancelled anything, I'm personally not going to Germany next year because it's too dangerous. If anything, you know, like a 2-week trip to Europe that I normally do would end up being at least 6 weeks, and I can't do that. You know, so I've put that one off for next year. I won't be going to Germany. So bit of a shame, but it's what it is. So we have to be careful. We have a new $100 banknote is going to be released at the end of October. Now this new $100 banknote is along the same lines as the 5, 10, 20 and $50 note with the clear track right through the middle of it. I haven't seen any, I don't know whether Rod's got any brochures or anything like that on it, but apparently they are going to be released at the end of October.
$128.
They want 20, huh?
$128.
$128. They pay $28 premium. Yes.
You're going to have to, apparently you're going to have to make an appointment at the Reserve Bank. So in other words, you've got to ring them first and they'll tell you a time that you can come in. And it's,
But you won't be able to buy it at the Reserve Bank, will you?
Yep, you will.
Will you?
And I think you can get up to 5,000 or something, but you've got $5,000 worth. And I think you've got to nominate how many you want and how you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
But that's apparently how it's going to be done, strictly on an appointment basis. And that'll run for the first week.
Yeah.
I think it's coming out on
29.
29th.
29th, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Pat's just given me a letter from the Reserve Bank, which I'll read out while we're waiting for Rod to come back. To mark the launch of the new $100 note on the 29th of October 2020, the Reserve Bank will be making 2 commemorative products available to the public for purchase. The next generation of $100 commemorative folder containing 1 new $100 banknote of the new series as a recommended retail price of $128. 2 generations of $100 commemorative folder containing 1 uncirculated $100 banknote of the existing series and 1 uncirculated $100 banknote of the new series at the recommended retail of $252. So what's that? Is that 240? Oh, there's a discount if you get that one. $4.
They used to be the AA, but they
No.
might not be
No.
only be the ordinary
Yeah.
banknote. The
The
one with
commemorative,
first prefix.
yeah, the commemorative products will be available for purchase from a range of retailers: Australian Postal Corporation or Australia Post, Royal Australian Mint, Downies. How about that? Please direct product inquiries to one of the listed retailers.
Get you to sign up.
Because I generally find that if you do try and ring the Reserve Bank and ask them for information about their banknotes, the person that answers the phone doesn't have a clue.
Well, this was a phone number, did you?
No, there is actually, just, the notes I made yesterday, you can, I think you can get up to $10,000 worth. Normally it's up to $500 worth.
Yeah.
You can get up to $10,000 worth for the first 2 weeks. From the 29th of October, you have to pre-book if you're going to turn up.
Yeah.
And nominate beforehand how much you want. There is a phone number I can give anyone that wants.
Mm.
It's on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you
And
do it?
they guarantee that they're not guaranteeing that there'll be consecutive numbers. You just get whatever they get.
But if you buy $10,000 worth, you should get a few consecutive.
I
I'm
think
sure
so.
there'll be somebody in the
not
right making
necessarily.
sure there aren't any consecutives.
Oh, in this letter, it has got the phone number of the Reserve Bank.
In Sydney? In
What
Sydney?
are the
Yeah, in
last
Sydney.
4 digits?
9551 9928.
9551, what?
9551 9928.
Yeah, that's the number to ring.
Yeah, that's in here.
That's if you're making a booking.
Yeah, you can make it. But if you want to go all the way down to Canberra, you can buy them over the counter. How about that? So,
You might have to book there too.
Or you can wait for the next ANS auction.
I think by then, next ANX auctions in January, I think everyone will have them by then.
$100 notes.
Yeah. What I'm trying to find out though is which is the next earliest $100. You know, in the pack. I sent an email to the Reserve Bank and say, okay, you're having this old one and new one, but what year's the new one? Because the 2019's information isn't in the website yet.
You should be able to get that from the
And
Reserve Bank.
There wasn't 100 in 2018. There was a 100 note in 2017, which was the low
You've written
Fraser,
that- you've written
low
that
Fraser
down.
signature combination.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, okay, 2017 maybe, maybe the earlier one. Don't know.
Mm. Okay. Okay.
It just says $100 note, so it could be, it won't be first or last prefix that they'll
First and
issue.
last prefix
Right.
means nothing anyway. The way they print them, you know, in the blocks with 25 and
They don't knock the first and last prefix. Got a lot of money for LQ.
oh yeah, I mean people are paying for that prefix letters, but it isn't printed first, is it? It's just like getting note number 1. Well, that's it might be the
You don't like
first.
them either?
Yeah. I wouldn't pay extra money for it.
Yeah, well, it's the same as when they have a thing down the Royal Australian Mint on the 1st of January. You know, the person that wins the ballot gets to mint the very first coin of the year. That's on only one machine.
Yep.
So then if you go around the corner and you put your money in on the second machine, you get the first coin out of that one. So what's the difference?
Well,
So
they look the same.
they are the same.
Presume.
Oh, they probably aren't exactly the same because depending on where they put the dies at the time on the second machine, and sometimes the reading is
Slightly fraction different, eh?
fraction out. So you can tell which machine it came out of. But yeah,
Who cares?
so that's it. Alright, is there any other general business? Ms. Frost, you want to say
Alright.
something?
Well, I'll start off with the IBNS. We had our first meeting of the IBNS
Oh,
for
yes.
months and months yesterday. And what I'd arranged was that it could be at this church. Rather novel. We all went to church on Sunday. Normally had the meetings on a fourth Thursday of the month.
Was it the Reverend
No,
Trevor
it was-
Wilkin, was it?
Now, that isn't all the IBNS members. What this was I was invited to a book launch a week earlier. A mate of mine is inheriting this church. It's full of history. It was built in 1850. It's in Marsden Road, Carlingford. And
Which one's that?
St Paul's was called. Yeah, it's a cricket publishing place. But
Left-hand side going
leave
towards
it up. And that stained glass, Ronald believes that's the previous captain of Australia in the middle up there, Mark Taylor. And that fine stained glass, Ronald believes that's was built in 1850 and believes that's the first stained glass built in the colony. All the other stained glass earlier was imported. The sandstone on the side and also goes down the centre under the carpet was hewn from quarries nearby in the Carlingford area, and the cedar ceiling up there. So we donned our masks and such, and it was quite surprising the number that came along really, and good to see many of the faces. Some of them, unfortunately, aren't doing well health-wise. It's I'm going to get you with names.
Graham Austin.
Yeah, Graham Austin's first. And it's Steve
Dowson.
Dowson.
And he's in a trouble.
Alex Brond, Scotty,
Scott de Jong,
Trevor.
Trevor Wilkin, Tony James.
James.
I don't know the next one, and then the next one's Graham Owen.
Graham,
He had a fine collection of, the subject was Portugal and Spain, and he had a fine collection of Portugal.
he's got a fine collection on everything.
Yeah, he started telling me some of the, anyway. No, it turned out a popular venue. There was more there than just that. But I took that because a lot of those are Postal Order Society members, and so it gives me something to put in. It'll be my 17th journal. We left after that. The meeting was between 11 and 1, and we went round to the bowling club afterwards, and it was a good venue. We're about the only ones having lunch there. So it was nice and quiet, good ambience. So we're booking our Christmas party there as well.
Former club with $1 million view.
Yeah, no,
Or used to it.
good. And as I say, there was hardly anybody there. So of course a few of them got in the raffle, and of course they're taking home plates of steaks and such. So the barbecue's at Graham Owen's place next week. Now, Tony James, you know Tony. Tony and another lad who I can't recall, but he had a little flyer out, Tony James. He's copying them in and going to have a pop-up shop. And they're going to run it for about a week in the Glebe area. Did you get more?
Yeah.
You don't happen to have it? Go on, scratch around, you'll have it.
I might not.
You might not.
We can probably email him anyway. Tony.
I do.
I'll pass around our journal, and what I'm finding is that there's a few people selling items that interest me, these postal orders, and hurting the bank balance. But a close friend of mine, Jack Harwood, who wrote a book on the New Zealand postal notes back in 2010, he's selling his collection, and it's coming up at Grosvenor in London, in their philatelic auction house, on the 2nd of December. So that prompted me to chase up Grosvenor and sting them for an ad on the back page of the next journal. And they're happy to come along to that, and it's marvellous if you approach these people, and they are happy to include a free catalogue out to any of these society members. And you know, the postage of that's rather expensive, especially the overseas ones. Like costs at least £5 to send the journal out to me. So I think I've covered things. That'll
Can
do
you
for
elaborate
now.
on what you're saying about Tony James? He's going to do a pop-up
A
shop?
pop-up shop. Yeah, there we go. Thanks.
What's this, Trevor?
Tony James, Note World, and it was funny, I asked Graham Owen, you were saying Graham Owen's got a tremendous number of notes. I was having lunch with him and I said, where on earth do you capture all these notes from? Because I've seen other albums brought in, and he said mostly from Trevor. So he's certainly a golden customer.
He used to buy a lot from Mark as well.
When he goes overseas too, he's got people over.
Yes, he was
goes
remarking
overseas.
how his wife was off on a plane that afternoon. He doesn't mention the name. He's got huge selection.
But he's got butterfly.
It's anyway November the 3rd to December the 18th on Tuesdays and Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays, and he's at on Parramatta Road,
No, they're not actually Parramatta Road.
Broadway Shopping Centre.
They're further up the road in Glebe Road, I think.
Is it in Glebe Road? But I'm sure if you're really keen, just get on his website and I'm sure he'll enlighten you.
So it's a Mint that has a pop-up shop.
No,
It's
he's
just him.
There we go.
Fill it up.
Coin and banknote pop-up shop. We'll give you an ad, Tony. There. It'll be on the internet.
Well, see, he's one of the dealers that relies a lot on the coin and banknote fairs.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, Ross. Is that all you got?
Yep.
Has anyone got any other general business? Right, we'll move on to the topic of the night, which is pre-decimal Australia. So I'm sure we've got a few people here that have got pre-decimal Australian coins and banknotes to show. We'll start with George. Put them over there, George.
A certain gentleman called George Kruger Gray. He put the kangaroo on our penny and halfpenny from 1938. As early as 1927, he designed the Parliament House on the Canberra florin. A few years later, a Melbourne centenary, which was retailed at the banks for $3, three shillings, which was a lot of money in those days for paying for a 2-bob piece. But that was another of Kruger Gray's designs. And throughout this whole period, from 1910 to 1963, we only had 4 commemorative coins, and they were all florins. There was the Federation, 2 shilling piece, 1951, and the Royal Visit. The Royal Visit, I remember that one very well, because I was out there with a flag outside the cricket ground as the Queen passed by. All the school kids were out there. What he did do, he put out a shilling with a thing called a ram on the reverse.
Merino.
Well, in 1948, at a place called Port Said in Egypt, we were trying to get onto a boat to Argentina, and a week later we got a passage to the States, but that was cancelled. So we got onto a boat coming to New Zealand, and that's the one I caught, and I ended up in Australia. On the boat was a very big, blonde, bosomy, youngish German lady, and she was a school teacher. She was going to teach us English. She was going to be a teacher. And in the first few days, I've learned things like a dog, a cat, which is a cat, and a horsey, good morning, good afternoon, and thank you. Then she came up with a kangaroo penny, and the kangaroo was just too hard to pronounce. But the ram on the shilling was the only thing I couldn't work out. So I borrowed it off her, and I went around the ship and to a few people, and they couldn't tell me what it was. It looked like a monster. The only sheep I've seen in my time were goats or lean greyhound type looking animals. Nothing like that. just strangely enough, about 18 years later, on a working holiday in West Germany, I went to a coin club in Frankfurt, and a bloke came out with an Australian set of new decimal coins. And he came up with a 5-cent piece. I identified everything on all the coins except the 5-cent piece. Would you believe it?
I've since got the echidna.
It is an echidna, isn't it?
Yep.
No, we're kidding you.
Oh, do you think
But I couldn't work out what it was. So, today, we have a commemorative coin or two just about every year. And from 1910 to 63, we only had 4 florins. We did have a 2 crowns, a 37 and a 38 crown come out. The 38 is much scarcer, and the Melbourne Centenary is a low mintage and a scarce coin. But today, to start collecting the modern coins, it's no longer as fun. Getting the Canberra florin was something else. Thank you.
Graham. Ross, you got anything to say?
No, somebody else.
Tony,
George has pretty much stolen all the thunder, I think.
we'll go with Graham.
And
anything else, eh?
not all the thunder, just some of the thunder. Tony's got £1 million and shilling badges.
As I was saying to Rod and John earlier too, I just sort of, well, probably shouldn't say inherited, but I've been getting involved in disposing of a deceased estate. So if anyone's interested in, there's not a lot of pre-decimal stuff, but there's a lot of proofs and uncirculated.
Happy to put them in the auction.
Yeah, not a bad collection. Well, I haven't been through it yet, but there's not. It looks to be a fair collection of world notes as well. So when we get a chance to sort of sort it out a bit, I'll get some more information. But most of these tonight are from that collection. But as George has already shown you, one would be very hard to see is the 1923 halfpenny.
Nice little coin to get.
It's very scarce.
I just hold it up.
And according to Renix, VG is about $1,200 at the moment, so that's worth something. But apparently, according to Renix too, most of them were minted using the 1922 die, but I don't know what significance that or how they do that without it being an overprint. If anyone's got any ideas on how to use a 22 die to print a 23 coin without it being an overprint. I don't know.
Nice coin to have in your collection.
Yes, I might take that as commission.
Yes. It's a nice crown.
A 1930 penny, which you'd all love to have. It's really genuine.
Strong colour.
Oh, well, it's just silver, but so what?
Paper.
There's supposed to be only 3,000 of them minted, and reportedly given out to school children on their visit to the mint. Currently, a VG one is going for about $18,000 if you can get one.
Not a bad copy, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, it seems to be all sort of all there, but,
Yeah, it's a nice copy.
yeah. And then, sort of crossing the date line, there was a 100-year anniversary on put out in 2011 to commemorate the first penny. It's only layered. It's not.
You collect silver? You got one of them?
It's not solid. As it says, it's only layered.
999 layered. Okay.
Yeah. Then we go into the rest of the coins. There's the threepence, sixpence, shilling, and what have you. Now, all of those were 92.5% silver. The 1922 threepence was overprinted on a 1921 one, which you can't actually see, but there's only supposed to be 900 of them. The shilling, there's only 760,000 of them, so they should be worth something.
These are all 1940s, huh?
Yeah, that's a significant date for me. 1927 there was two florins. There was the coat of arms and the Parliament House ones. Again, but they're all still 92.5% silver. The 27.
The normal 27's the harder one to find.
Yeah.
Parliament House is common.
Yeah, well, there was 1,480,000 of the common, the normal one, I suppose you'd call it. The 27 there's only supposed to be 2 million of them. There's a one-off issue issued on the 9th of May to 1927 to commemorate the opening of Parliament House in Canberra.
But everyone saved them.
Yeah, and I believe the date is actually hand inscribed. But I don't know how they get them all the same, because I've seen quite a few and they all look exactly the same, so whether somebody had a very steady hand to...
It might have been hand inscribed on the die and then stamped.
Die or something, however they do it. Then we have a 1932 florin, which is pretty scarce. There's only supposed to be 188,000 of them minted.
That's a nice one too.
Then the 34, 35 Melbourne Centenary. Now all of these are still 92.5% silver, and as George said, the 34, 35 was released at 3 shillings to help cover the cost of the Victorian centenary celebrations. Then we have the 37 and 38 crowns. The 37 crown, there was only 1,008,000 of them, but people didn't want it for whatever reason, so it was only that was only a year that they issued that. Followed up by the 38, which was only a one-off again, and there's only 101,000 of the 38s, according to Mr. Rennick.
And yet they're still pretty common because everyone saved them.
Yeah, that's the thing. But, so that's what I have.
I brought in a 32 as well, and your 32 and the one I brought in are much of a muchness.
Yeah.
And there's a 32 that I've got from my friend, which is in the next auction. So suddenly we see 32 florins, which are... Yeah.
Okay, great.
I have got a few notes, but they're pretty chatty.
Talking of notes, this is the only note I have in my collection. The only one. The rest of the notes we have are Dad's.
Half sovereign.
Because it's the half sovereign.
Very nice.
Yes. According to Wikipedia, first issued on the 1st of May 1913. That was the first 10 shilling note. A little interesting thing, the sizes varied throughout the years of the notes production. From 13 to 14, that's 1913 to 1914, it was 194 by 83. And then in 1915 to 1923, it jumped up in size to 197 by 88. And then in 1923 to 1933, it jumped up to 180 by 78 millimetres long. Let's see what else. It was the button of the printing machine was pressed by Judith Denman, the 5-year-old daughter of the Governor General, Lord Denman, at the time. A little bit on him. He was the 3rd Baron of Denman. He was Australia's youngest Governor General at 36. He hung around for 4 years before going back to England and being promoted to the House of Lords, and a couple other titles he picked up. He passed away at 79 in England. They were made from cotton rather than paper. Yeah, that's all. The Wikipedia information only like 4 lines on it.
Do you have any information why there was a variance in the...
No, they didn't say why it jumped up in size as the years went. Maybe because cotton became cheaper, or they just wanted to show that it was worth more by making it slightly bigger every year.
What are numbers?
Well, it kicked...
This is AA over 32.
Yeah, that one. Well, it actually started, the first 10 shilling note started off with M000001. That was the first one that was printed.
Yeah. That was the one given to the daughter.
Yes.
Well, it sold for millions.
Yes, yeah, I was reading a little tiny caption this afternoon in Renix. Yeah, the first 7 notes went to various dignitaries. I think the Prime Minister got one at the time. The head of the Mint got one, and a few other dignitaries also got them.
Now who the Prime Minister was at the time?
Fisher.
Yeah, I think it was Fisher, yeah. This particular Governor General, what I read about him in another page was that they got on very well. So yeah, they were all happy together. No one was trying to tell each other what to do.
And apparently they had a 10 shilling note, it was a political decision.
Sorry?
They had having a 10 shilling note was a political decision.
All right.
Before that, all the banknotes in Australia have been, the lowest denomination had been £1. And the Prime Minister wanted a note that was less in value for ordinary working people to handle one now and again.
Yeah.
And the financiers fought him for the same reason, because they didn't want their money soiled by working men's hands.
Yeah, I read that somewhere once before. Yeah, there was
That's the same with the sovereign. The sovereign was the bullion coin, and the half sovereign was used by the populace.
Yeah, yeah, I've read that a couple of different things. Yeah. So yeah.
Thank you.
What year is it?
That's a 26.
26.
Now, following a theme that I'm doing in this is showing countries that have issued postal notes that have circulated alongside banknotes as currency. So with that in mind, the January Journal feature one of these, this West Australian one, and these were produced between 1887 and 1901. And even though, strictly speaking, they weren't meant to be called currency, they certainly circulated as currency, and it's noted in many, many areas. The same as, so that was the £5 in New Zealand that was definitely circulated as currency, because that and that's missing out of the fantastic Tonner collection, and they came about when I studied some microfilm right in Phyllis House here and discovered it back in 1990s. but I couldn't understand how the Postmaster General could approve one as an item for currency. It turned out he was the Treasurer as well. Later became the Prime Minister. So there's the two Australian ones that I'll be featuring. This is the New Zealand one on the other side.
Other side, right?
Other side. Yeah, they were the English ones. And this one's of special interest to me because I ended up getting this out of Ray Jewell, who surprised me one time. We used to go down there monthly for the Downy sales, and the buy of the month was page by page. We'd buy all these Australian decimal proof sets, but we'd also visit their dealers around. You'd go around to Reg Williams, he'd always have a Victorian Melbourne Centenary florin or two for us, and I'd always try and visit Ray, but took many years to be entrusted by Ray. Used to always be going visiting him at Max Stern, and Max would make sure he only had about 2 minutes with us. So it took a long time to get to know Ray, but it was when he joined up with Jim and had his own office that we could spend some more time together. And on one of these monthly visits, he comes out with this and a number of other super rarities. And one of these has appeared before in about 2010 and went for about $10,000. So that's the West Australian one. Now, I'm wrapped in seeing what George can have enjoy in that. That's how we used to collect, and you got much enjoyment. You didn't have to worry about these MS65s and all that, but that's the way it seems to be going. But this item, I don't even own this item. How this one came about was with the papers that we submitted for the June conference. I had a email from this Malcolm Johnson, who's a member in Victoria. He was talking to me about these canteen orders that I put in an article about. And he referred me to his website, Mal's Coins. You can all have a look if you're interested at any stage. And I went through, and sure enough, I come up with a postal note. Now, well, innocuous as it is, about a 1950 postal note. But lo and behold, it was issued in Japan. You say, how'd this happen? So that's where the story starts. I'll bore you, but I think you'll be interested. Should get my glasses. Yeah, you got it.
British Commonwealth Forces
It's a good
Korean
story,
War.
but it's surprising how many people got involved in it. And
The COF.
thanks. We'll try this. Yeah, they're pretty good. Okay. One can be forgiven for disbelieving. The scene is set for a most interesting find. The end of World War II, a British Commonwealth occupation force had been formed in 1946 with its headquarters in Kure, Japan. Oh, you can put that. Oh, I'm reading from that. That'll make it hard, won't it? But it was a shipbuilding plant for Japan. So when the war was over and the British occupied it, their headquarters were there. The postal note in itself is not considered rare, but with an interesting issuing stamp makes it worthy of further research. Other issuing stamps are known from Australian Army post offices, but are from camps within Australia. Pay Rex Allison, I can pass that around. It's got on it, Pay Rex Allison. So I thought, who on earth is Rex Allison? So Rex was born in Toowoomba, Queensland, and at the age of 15 years of age, born in 1905, joined the Royal Australian Navy. Midshipman Allison made a career in the Navy, having served on the HMAS Canberra, HMAS Adelaide. In addition to service medals, he was presented with a long service and good conduct medal and a clasp, which not a lot of them get that. And then also he got the Queen Elizabeth II coronation medals. And I was surprised really how, hundreds got them, but not thousands. His hobby was philately, specialising in whatever took his fancy, and was current at the time. He married, resided most of his adult life in Williamstown, Melbourne, Victoria. Rex Allison's service record shows that while serving on the HMAS Adelaide on a mission in the Pacific Ocean, he was a member of an armed ground party on the Solomon Islands where he contracted malaria, which possibly contributed to his untimely death, aged only 67 in 1972. So you dig out all these good things, you know. The HMAS Adelaide was a town-class light cruiser built at Cockatoo Island, Sydney, nicknamed HMAS Long Delayed, because it was laid down in 1915 and completed in 1922. I think the unions must have been having a go at things. And then you find a picture of HMAS Adelaide personnel landing at Malaita Island. Turning to Rex Allison, the enthusiast, philatelist, one starts to understand the reason for the 1 shilling postal note. Here he is in 1934. So they had queues back in those days to get you talking about the number 1 at the Canberra Mint. Well, here's this guy, number 1 in the queue in 1934. And this was all third parties got this to me, you know, this photo of him. Rex Allison at a temporary post office in Melbourne Town Hall, handing over covers to Mr Dearden, assistant postmaster on the extreme right, Mr J Casey, the exhibition postmaster, next to him Mr C.G. Oaten, district inspector in charge. Photo courtesy of John Walker. Again in the philatelic limelight, winning the championship of the 1937 airmail exhibition in Melbourne, with his display of covers carried on the 1934 London to Melbourne air race. I don't know whether that's familiar to anybody, it wasn't to me. But it was a phenomenal air race, it really was, and back in those days.
Ed can tell us a lot about it.
His display consisted of commemorative envelopes, each addressed to himself and hand-signed by one of the aviators who competed in the air race. He couldn't get the Australian guy to sign it, so he located him in a hotel in Sydney and went and sat outside his room until he came out and signed it. This guy was super keen. Now this is the classic too. This reminds me of Mick Fort Ronald. Also enhancing his display were numerous air race memorabilia, including pilots' prize-winning cheques drawn on the National Bank of Australasia. So Mick used to go in uniform to the various branches and introduce himself and how interested he was, and the managers were quite taken by this South Australian policeman, and you know, anything you want, you know. But duly deposited to a winner's account and cancelled. At this time, cheques were usually processed by banks, cancelled and stored for many years. It was one of my first jobs in the bank in 1963, quite tedious. Rex Allison's trophy was presented by Sir Macpherson Robertson. He hit the papers. Macpherson Robertson was Australia's confectionery king, an infamous philanthropist who had sponsored the air race. See illustrated newspaper clippings, there they are down there. And he's described in one of the papers, this was one where I think the Packers, one of the early Packers had an interest in or something. But an introduction to a one-page illustrated, it was a full-page article on him, and it was in the Smith's Weekly of the 28th of November 1936. And he's described, Dick Whittington and Robert Bruce were mere amateurs in perseverance. The Canadian Northwest Police, the Get Your Man specialist, must be good. Williams, one-time souvenir king of the AIF and since then an autographed monarch, has proved himself. But the story behind the compilation of the official paradox will be explained later. History of the Melbourne Centenary Air Race reveals Rex Allison, AB, HMAS Canberra, as the world champion in dogged, unrelenting tenacity. He's proved himself a veritable bulldog of collectors, and to round off the metaphor, his bite have ranged across the world. Now then we toddle on with it, and we get from parts of Rex's collection were sold at PJ Downey Proprietary Limited in April 71, lot 2148, and that was his BCOF collection in two volumes, and that had an estimate of $1,500. Again at PJ Downey in September 1973, and you know, I've got to thank the librarian here. I'll see him tomorrow actually, because I gave him the wrong date, so he's fished through Downey catalogues that they hold here.
Yeah, Morris, probably.
And was deemed to be such significance that it was bought prior to the auction by the National Library of Australia. The estimate was $5,000, and then in 2016-17 it was exhibited in the Gallery of Treasures at the National Library, Canberra. That's the way it was described, and the auction house, PJ Downey, was again chosen in 1973 to sell this item. Worth noting at the time, 1970, one could buy sovereigns for $12 each, and Harley dollars, and the sovereigns, you'd get mixed rare dates amongst those, and the Harley dollars were $1,000. So they're selling for over 200,000. So you can imagine what this collection was. Then we find going through some noble sales. You know, I've only got them to the ceiling sort of thing, and I've always got two copies. One to and Allison's medals come up, you know, for it. So it just shows you where you can go with these things. And I could have continued on and on and on, but a bit mind-boggling.
It's got a bit boggle sometimes.
Yeah, quite different.
Good, thanks Ross. Okay Tony, let's have a look at your badges.
No guessing what I brought in. And I wasn't quite sure how many were going to turn up tonight, so I thought, well, I'll just bring a few extra, just in case. But anyway,
Remember, we have an auction as well.
basically, it's sort of one of those sort of things you can put them out here and people can look at them later. Do you want to show some of them up on the screen, or
Yeah.
Sure.
but yeah, see them later on? Anyway, I've brought in some tinnies as well as some enamel ones. You'll be quite au fait with the companies and so forth. A lot of them, of course, are those ones here, of course, as you can see, I think of the legacy, and some of them get prices £5 for some of the earlier ones. They're a bit hard to dig out too, I might add. Particularly in collection, people sort of think because it's £5 they can keep it, might get £5 for it, but you won't. And you don't have to pay £5 to get them anyway. But they're not cheap because they're a bit hard to get. So you can see the design of the legacy ones is quite extensive, and there's different manufacturers, of course. Some of them don't have any manufacturers at all on, and they've obviously shipped it around depending on who got the contract for 1 year and the like. And yeah, so that's it. There was some more of
£5. That was a
£5. Well, it's a lot of money.
Lot of money, yeah.
I mean, that's why they're a bit hard to find, because you're going way back into the sort of 50s and
£10 from
60s and
Amors.
like, it's a £10 one. It's an Amor one, which is a bit unusual for badges to have Amor on it. I don't know whether it's possible somebody else did it, but put Amor on it, who knows. But a badge with Amor sort of on one of the legacy ones is a bit unusual.
It'll be a quality item.
Yeah, oh yes, of course. no question about that. So, so there's quite a variety of designs there with Legacy, and of course there are a lot of the Legacy. I don't know where I brought the Legacy one. Some of the tinnies. No, we'll continue on with the enamel ones. There may be the odd cheer up a couple of odd ones thrown in there that don't have any dollars and cents, don't have any proper money on them. I wasn't going to take them out because there's only a couple. I'll leave them in their sheds. These are some other ones here. They're quite interesting, sort of different designs, patterns and so forth for Rose Day, which of course obviously was raising money, and a lot of the money was used of course for the armed forces with Rose Day and the like, and that's why it was another popular charity for people to support, and some of those was sort of a bit of there's a 10 bob one there, and of course they changed the designs, and they're all these ones of course are enamel, and searching for enamel badges. You probably realise they're in quite good condition. Some are a bit hard to get. A lot of them got cracks in them and bits falling off them, so you have to sift through them and pick out the ones that you want for your collection. I find it sort of not a good idea to be collecting things that have got cracks and dirt in them, because it takes it away from the nice ones alongside. So it's only in a rare sort of a condition where I know it's so rare that it has got a bit of a dirty mark or a bit of a rust mark or a crack, that I might have kept it in the collection, but there's not very many of them.
Can you do anything to help preserve them?
Once they're deteriorated to the extent where there's rust or there's cracks or anything like that, and no. The only time is if you get sort of the verdigris and so forth on them through use and handling and so forth, yes. I have a product that's made down in Victoria now, and I forgot what it is, which I do use for cleaning them up, and it punes, it doesn't do anything to the actual badge itself. It cleans them up quite nicely, but if it's damaged or got cracks or rust in them, nothing to do with that. I get rusty things, I basically throw them away, because who wants to keep that sort of stuff in collecting, you know. And that's proverbial Red Cross, of course, as we all know, is raises a lot of money, and of course it does have it once again for the armed forces as well as the hospitals and the like. Some of those are up into the £5 areas. Again, once again, you get different manufacturers in the parks there.
Tony, when you're going to the different venues to find the odd one of these, your collection's now so comprehensive, have you got a list of them? How do you know you're not doubling up?
Haven't you seen my catalogues that I've produced?
No.
I'll bring it in next week, you'll see them. I've got about between 8,000 and 9,000 badges.
Oh, right.
And so I have the catalogue, so I've photocopied those, and I've kept them all in a sheet and bring them in. So I bring one in next week and I can put the deposit through. When I go to any of the fairs, a lot of the dealers there, did you bring your catalogue? Yeah. And they sit down at lunchtime and go for an hour and just, I really enjoy these things. Alrighty, so that's some of the that's the enamel ones. I do have quite a lot more, but I can't bring you too much. Here's some more Red Cross, and you'll see that quite a lot. Some of these things are quite interesting when you see them alongside one another. You think, why has he got two in there? I've probably brought one here, I think, where it shows you. You look at them and you'll be surprised how you'll see sixpence, and then you'll see another one come along, it's sixpence, but it's slightly different. So they use a design one year, and then slightly change it the next year, and change the sequences might be a little bit thicker, or a bit bigger, or a bit small, or maybe not even on at all, or a different part of the badge. So that's why when you look at some of these things, you'll see they've got like 4 of them along. Other things change too. They slightly change the sort of colours and things, even though they haven't changed the design. So when you're going looking for them, if you're going to go for varieties, well, you're into varieties, you see. So that makes it interesting as well. And it's surprising how I found that over many years of looking around, you go somewhere and you pick this thing up and you've seen this badge umpteen times and you think to yourself, something different about that, you know, and you're not quite sure what it is. I'll take it, you know, go home, and you find it's just slightly different, some slightly different colour, different size and something or other, or something's moved around the edge, and that's how they just slightly change them to go from one year to another. I hope it's done for collectors, I'm not sure, but anyway, I appreciate it. There's one there, I think now there's probably there's some variation there with colour design too. It doesn't sort of show quite up on the screen, but I can see it. There's some ones there that follow on suit too, once again. Now there's slight variations in some of those too. Sometimes they'll have a shilling on one side, and then you might have shilling on both sides in some areas as well. You see the same ones there. See how the shilling's different on that one? It's so small in the black, and then the other one's blue, and it's a slightly different shilling to these ones. Just those little minute changes.
Is that because of different manufacturers?
Generally speaking, no, a lot of these things are done by A.W. Fitzpatrick's at Summerhill, and as we were looking a bit earlier on some of these things, if you have a real good look just around the periphery at the edge, you can see it. That's it, if it's on. Not on all the badges this has done it, but we saw some today and we were pointing it out, and yeah, so that's the sort of thing that sort of can happen. There are some other batches that are down in South Australia. Schluck, something like that. I just can't remember, it'll come to me when I'm in bed tonight and it's only, that's right, that's the name. Always happens like that. Righto, there's some TPI ones here. Some variations in designs and colours and so forth.
Do many charities have badges as fundraisers today, or it's gone?
I think they do, but they're all plastic and horrible, and acrylic. So, as far as I'm concerned, I only collect up to the change when we went to decimals, because at about the same time I found things were changing in manufacturing as well. They were starting moving from Australia. For us to be producing enamel badges and these small ones was getting expensive, and so a lot of that stuff disappeared to China, or in Australia they changed from enamels and went to acrylics. And so, but I wasn't interested in those because acrylics they scratch, and enamels is something else. It's like talking about silver when you talk about badges, you know, against acrylics. It's sort of, it's more upmarket and more sort of state of the art. Have enamels and some other materials, and so that's what I stick with those. So that's why I sort of cut out them, and so I've only got pound, shilling, pence ones.
Now, tape, they don't give us even a plastic ones, they give us an online, you know, like a picture online of a badge if you do something.
Well,
You could just want a badge for having done this particular thing, whatever it is, but it's an online thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
digital.
yeah, well, that might
You can print
excite
it out,
somebody, but it
still
won't.
only comes out about the size of a 5-cent coin.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't excite me, I'm sorry.
No, nor anyone else.
These, when I photocopy all these, I have a machine at home which is busted. Heck, you've got one of my machines too, haven't you? Mine, is it? Well, I've got two or three now, two for spare parts. But I haven't got round to doing anything with it myself. I might come over one day and you can have a crack at it, but it's, the actual photocopies that I take on it can't be reproduced by Canon whatsoever in their factory. Remember when I went to, they said that what you've got is a copying machine, which is a 3D machine, and it photocopies as good as you'll see on the sheets. And when I read the book next week, you'll see what I mean. And everybody remarks up wherever I've been, and I have my catalogues there and people look through, they always remark on it. They said, what sort of machine is that? I said, it's just a Hewlett-Packard, but it's a 3D copying machine. Too expensive to produce today, I suppose. And so that's why, but who really wants to go around and have a machine that I suppose wants to photocopy badges? See, so I guess the demand's not there, so why would anybody produce it, an expensive machine, and who would buy it? So, so that's why I'm trying to keep these ones going, because the new ones don't work.
Right.
So that's my little lot for tonight, to pass a bit of time. And
Right. Thanks, Tony.
I'm glad I didn't get. Thank you.
Maurice, so you got something to show? John?
Okay, I don't have as much in the way of badges to show as Tony just showed, but I did remember that I've got these particular ones. Which I'll put it so that Rod can show them. The white ones and the ones next to them. In February of 1941, it was a Greek Day parade. Because the Greeks were fighting the Italians. And in March of 1941, I found out when I was looking these up the other night, there was also a Greek Day parade in Brisbane. And these badges, I think, were produced for the Sydney parade. And they're 1 shilling, or they're 6pence each. And they raised, they must have sold a lot of badges because they raised £20,000. At a shilling each or 6pence each. So I printed out the articles there. So there were Greek soldiers on parade as well in Sydney, and they produced a different sort of badge up in Brisbane. There's not a very good photo of it there. So I'd forgotten about these badges that I thought about tonight, and then I thought, of course, they're pre-decimal. So there's those, and then while I was looking at those, I remembered I've got these as well, articles on heads you win, heads or tails you win, about collecting pre-decimal coins, and old coins worth a mint, also about collecting pre-decimal coins. So anybody that's interested can have a look at those as well. And then I figured everybody else would be bringing all the Australian stuff. What I've got here, 1970, the old pre-decimal English currency, 1971, the new pre-decimal currency, the new decimal currency in England. And then last, hopefully not least, in Greece you have like plum puddings in Christmas with coins in them. In Greece it's Easter bread, and New Year's bread, sorry. and they like to have a valuable coin in there. It'd be nice to have a gold sovereign in there, but so nobody can afford one of those. So they produce these instead. They look like a sovereign, and they're a lot cheaper to buy.
And can you eat them? Can you cook them?
Well, you can cook them, yeah. They don't poison you.
I don't they sort of slightly put a taste in a pudding or
They still look like gold.
I know.
That's the point, isn't it? So I'll put those over there. The articles so you can look at them if they want.
Thanks, John.
But he's got a couple of badges here I don't have. So you better watch out.
Did you bring anything along, Tony? No. David?
Good being sort of towards the end there. I'll try and avoid saying anything that's been already said before. As you probably know, Australian pre-decimal coinage is not my specialty, but it's amazing living in the country. You do pick up the occasional few, and I've got that. The first thing I'd like to show you is this book here, which is my one and only reference for Australian pre-decimal coins. Market Guide, Australian Coin and Banknote. I've got one of the least rare types, one actually signed by Greg McDonald. Anyone who's got one that hasn't is probably a rarer type. But this was a pretty interesting work, out in 1987, I think, first edition it says. Hard to find some. I hate coin books which don't put the date prominently that they were produced, you know. Anyway, this has got a mine of information about it, and especially I was just going through my meagre collection of what I did have, I realised as the period of the wars was quite interesting, in that most of the time the pre-decimal currency was minted in Australia. Melbourne featured quite heavily as the main mint for it, but during the First World War, certainly a lot of the pennies were minted in India, Calcutta. During the Second World War, they were minted in Bombay, and that's interesting itself because they've got the mint marks I to identify them, I for India. The silver is different too, and especially my birth year. I've always been collecting coins 1943 because that's the year I was born, in the middle of the Second World War, and I didn't realise how dangerous a period it was at the time. But after a while I realised that people went through a lot. In Australia we were, as you know, protected from the worst part of it, especially in southern Australia. But I realised the year before I was born was probably the depth of fear in Australia. It must have been, because Sydney was sunk in 1942, the bombing of Darwin took place, a lot of which didn't actually appear on the news, of course, for wartime. Nobody wanted to panic people. But nevertheless, 42 was bad, and that year Australia didn't produce its own silver much, and likewise in 43. It turns out that a lot of the silver was produced in America, the US of A, even though in 1942 they were drawn into the war because of Pearl Harbor. But nevertheless, the war never really hit the mainland of the USA, and it never hit Australia that much either. But clearly we were doing other things because we couldn't or didn't produce our own silver coins, and so in the year of my birth I always looked for the S mint mark, which is the fact that the coins were minted in San Francisco. And as I understand it, we didn't actually ship silver over there to be minted or anything like that. We borrowed their silver, and after the war we had to really work hard at Broken Hill to pay it all back in bullion. Probably had to pay for the mintage costs separately, but that was a different thing. So I thought that was an interesting thing.
But they gave it to their servicemen as they came over.
Yeah, well, that could be, but anyway, so I've got a few coins here, just typicals, no sort of big sets or anything. Here's the, here's a 1943 shilling. I'll leave it in the plastic because it's harder to see through the lens there, but you can see just under the ram's head, there's a little S in it. You can see there, that's the S for San Francisco. And the others, is the threepence also was the same thing. What else is interesting? Oh yes, and another thing, not in the war, but I thought This is another interesting one about the Australian coinage. Remember all the hiatus with Wallace Simpson and Edward VIII and all of that happening, and they, wasn't sure who was going to be the king. But the halfpennies, all the earlier halfpennies of George V were minted this reverse, but as the first 2 years of George VI were also minted this reverse.
Yeah.
And the kangaroo was introduced in the last issue at the same year. So there were kangaroo and the old type reverse from the halfpennies, but not on the pennies. The George VI pennies only ever had the Kruger Grey design of the kangaroo.
They're not rare though.
No, they're not rare. They're not rare. They're
There's
just
plenty of them.
interesting, just different.
Yeah.
I only bought one sixpence. Now the sixpence was quite a useful coin. I remember when I was a kid. I used to buy a lot actually, surprisingly. And sixpence is the only coin in the whole series of silver coins which retained the same reverse design from Edward the Seventh in 1910 right up to the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign. Just the simple kangaroo with the triangular shield and the star above was the reverse. Now there is one quite interesting thing too, which was a consequence of World War II, and that was that India, as you know, got its independence in 47, was it 1947? And up to that, the standard title for the king was King Emperor. He was, Ind stood for India Imperator, the Emperor of India. That was a title that after India got its independence, they stripped from royalty, no longer on. So in a little hiatus there, but in the first issue after this happened, they had to change the inscription especially on the George ones, because get rid of the indent of it. And I don't know why, but in 1951 they minted in England, in London, the 1951 sixpence. So I think this is one of the most common sixpences of the whole George VI reign, but minted in London. So I'll just show you that because it's also got a mint mark on.
Little
Just
PL,
show you the reverse, which is a PL. The original mint mark on Roman coins. I've got a coin bronze of Constantine I, which has the mint mark PLN on it. Pecunia Londinium Numisma, I believe, or something like that. Numis.
You can see the PL
is
just
the
above the
actual-
95.
PL is the actual mint mark. And there you see, just below the scroll, between the scroll and the 1951 there, you can see PL, Pecunia Londinium. So that's the London mint mark. Why, I don't know. They're happily minting in Melbourne and had been for a long time. But
Maybe they needed more.
maybe they're just the cheapest quote at the time. That's all I can think of.
You don't hear people talk about that much at all, David.
Do what?
You don't hear people talk about that sixpence at London at all. Even when I was working in Nobles, I hardly ever sort of remember anybody ever mentioning it.
The PL?
Yeah.
Well, that's because it's a common
I
coin.
don't
It's
say
not
common, but
it's not a rare coin. It's not an expensive coin, so
of course.
no one's going to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I
anyway.
suppose there's no
That's,
reason to talk about it.
that's the mint mark. I look for the S's and the D's, which are D for Denver. That was the other American mint that minted silver in the Second World War, and less commonly than San Francisco, and of course the PL.
Actually, the PL, according to Renix, that was the highest mintage of 20 million.
Yeah, I know. It was it's the most common coin of George VI's.
I don't know, you have to check with him.
Sixpences. What else is interesting? Always like a nice florin of George V. I think they're lovely. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say was the change of composition. They struggled through the war, right up to the Second World War, having a sterling silver currency, pretty much. And here in 1946, they said, blow this, and it's probably something to do with the fact that everyone else was stealing our 2 bobs because they were worth a lot more than 2 bob on the overseas market as bullion, melted down. But anyway, they stopped minting
Sterling.
the sterling, and they went 50-50 from then on. And I remember my grandparents talking about it because one of my treats when I was a kid was going to have Christmas
you
dinner at their place, and there's always
copied
Christmas
those?
pudding. And they had real threepences and sixpences in it for the kids to find. But they told me, they always looked at the date, oh no, we can't put that one in. That's had to be sterling silver to put it in the Christmas
Up till
pudding.
1948.
Yeah, so that's the
My,
way.
my
So I
eyes
always
would light
think,
up because my uncle would always pull a 2 bob out. And I couldn't believe it. It was always 6% and 3%.
always a two.
As you said,
You
he
had
come
to
out
be-
with a 2
had to
bob.
be careful, didn't you? So look, that's probably enough for me to say. We already saw a 1938 crown. Yes, that was another interesting thing. McDonald remarks on that. He thought originally it was the 1937 one was put out as a coronation celebration. But that no longer a commemorative when they brought out a 1938 one too. That sort of was the start of a series, and that's the end of the series as well. So the 1938 vintage was 10 like was a million crowns in 37 and only 100,000 in 38, something like that. So there you go. Of course, they did change, as I say, the sixpence, or just going back to that, the same design all the way through, but of course the 2 bob changed with the different coat of arms, and they, you can see the beautiful one of, probably not the authentic coat of arms actually, the one that with George, but the George VI one, probably more authentic, but not quite. The only authentic coin I know of is the 50 cent, rounds 50 cent silver of Elizabeth. That had the proper authorised coat of arms in it, but these are so black, and you can tell it's not the full silver, unfortunately. Okay, all right, that's probably enough. Thank you for that.
I still have threepences in the Christmas pudding for the grandchildren, but I've got to give them $5 and buy them back.
Yeah, that's good enough too. Yeah, they did, you often pick up the threepence and say, oh, well, that's been in the Christmas pudding. Yeah.
If it's
yes, so we had
45 or before, that's silver value, $5.
of course, just to rely on the theme I was talking about, the design change of the threepence was the coat of arms to the 3 sheaves of wheat, and the design to the shilling was from the coat of arms to the ram's head. Australia was still riding on the sheep's back then.
Thanks, David.
So the addition of the change in composition, in the 50s I think, I remember reading about somebody that was forging 2 shilling coins.
Oh, yeah.
And when he was charged, he was really irate because he said, well, my money's more valuable than what the government's producing. Apparently he had more silver in it, and he was still making money. But I never understood at the time why he said my money's more valuable than what the government's producing.
Well, that's the thing. The First World War, the main thing that caused was the end of gold. Second World War, the main thing that caused was the end of silver. From then on, we really have just a base metal currency and have had ever since. If it's a metal at all, mainly it's just plastic nowadays.
Have you got anything?
Well, I've got a florin that's been pressed out of lead. Well, it feels like it.
Yeah, probably worth.
Well, I can remember us kids in school, you toss them up and you go, oh, when you hit the concrete, you knew that's a dud.
Right, Rod's going to show some banknotes.
Well, I thought, what will I show? Which everyone else isn't going to show. And I'm glad I brought these along. Grant showed a nice half sovereign. These are 10 shillings. So there's the George VI 10 shillings. It's a Riddle Sheehan signature, so I think that's 1936, George V. Then George VI kept the same format, so design is the same. It's the red 10 shillings. The first one was it has half on it, whereas it says 10 shillings there, but it does show a half sovereign. And George VI as well shows the half there for half sovereign, but 10 shillings as well, kept the same format. And then when Queen Elizabeth came in, they showed Matthew's Flinders on the 10 shillings. And it's surprising, the George V 10 shillings is quite a hard note. So I was contemplating giving these 3 notes to Jim Noble and saying, put them in the next auction and get me some money for them. And that George V 10 shillings, you know, it's worth quite a few $100s, even in that nice condition. And that's my bit, because I brought a 32 florin to show, but we've already seen one, and my one's in exactly the same condition, so it's no better.
Sure. Thank you. Is there anyone I missed? No.
One more after you.
One more?
Quick one, I could.
Okay. All right, I've got just 2 items to show. You know, as opposed to a couple of the members that sort of said that they collect a special date because it's their birth date. Yeah, it was 1940 or something. But these 1959 pre-decimal coins have got nothing to do with my age. I'm a lot older than that. I brought along a very nice florin 1959. So it's basically the same as what everybody else was showing. So I brought that along. It's a very nice looking coin, but I brought it along mainly to sort of show the difference between a nice looking coin and a proof set. So that was the main reason why I brought that 1959. This is the 1959 pre-decimal proof set. And as you can see, you've got your florin, your penny, shilling, sixpence, threepence. But in the 59, they also, the proof sets were produced in Melbourne and Perth. Now, the reason why these 2 here have toned is because they weren't treated like the other penny here. Now, this particular penny came from, was minted in Perth, but when they produced that proof penny, they put a little bit of lacquer over it, and that's why it stayed in good condition. All the other coins were made at the Melbourne Mint, and they didn't treat the copper, so obviously the copper has toned over the years, and that's why they don't look as pristine as all the others, but that's the way they are. So I'll show you those ones. But that's a nice little proof set.
That's the official casing, you know? No, I didn't think so.
They had them made. So unfortunately, every once in a while you'll see that the coins themselves, because they're not a tight fit, they tend to move every time you move the thing. The coin starts moving around.
Could be even the plastic having an effect on that copper.
Well, it could be.
They also move because of the Earth's revolving as well, believe it or not.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
And other vibrations, if you're living near a main road, trucks and things whizzing up the roads, they'll change there as well.
I thought it was just the fact that, you know, like there's so many different coins, and you've got to keep tapping it to see if you can get them all lined up.
Well, that's I tap them to try and get back.
Yeah, get them all lined up.
Yeah,
Right?
you can do it. I've sat for hours tapping some of the two to get
Need a
the
lot of
thing going
patience,
back
don't
round. Because it's worth more money if it's ripped up right rather than if it's sideways.
Why don't you just undo the screws and manually turn them?
Well, I don't have screws on mine. They're all sealed, you know, electronically sealed.
Anyway, that's my contribution in the 1959 preset. Thank you all for coming. It's good to see that we've got a good turnout again. Ross wants to take the limelight. And okay, Ross, quick.
I just forgot. I don't know whether you guys are using superannuation. I'm sure that a banker down there would be relying on his superannuation in retirement. When I retired from the bank, I left the bank I didn't retire, in 78, I couldn't cash it in quick enough. I never liked the fees when I saw the fees, different ones charged. So, you know, I managed to still get the odd sovereign out of the bag you know, back in the 70s for $12, so I thought I'd put that one on display, you know, and that's really my superannuation. Yeah, that's it. I believe in those.
Nice little
more than
Sydney Mint.
the official. I'm a bit worried about governments at times.
Yeah, quite right.
What year?
They're lovely.
That one's an 1859.
59, yeah.
You know, rather worn Sydney Mint.
It's not that worn.
No.
Not too bad, that one's good. Gee whiz.
Okay, well, if everybody's done now, I'll say thank you all for coming. We'll close the meeting, we'll get our refreshments, but don't forget we've got the auction after that. So